Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you all of the books that I read in January. Okay, let me preface this video by saying thank you. Thank you guys so much for all your thoughts and prayers. I had posted on my community tab, a lot of you are aware that my entire family got hit with COVID the first week of February, last week of January, and it was quite a doozy of a week. And so I took an entire week off of filming, and therefore this is a little bit late, but we're all doing fine now. Everybody's recovered, everybody's great. It's all fine, but thank you so much for your thoughts and your prayers. A lot of you guys reached out to me, and I really appreciate that. You guys are the best. So I still wanted to share with you guys though what I read in January. I read 14 books in January and DNF'd one. Like, that's a ton. And so I wanted to share all of them with you. Some of them I loved, some of them I really didn't. And so yeah, let's just get into it. I'm gonna go in the order that I read the books, and so we'll just start from there. The first book that I have on my stack is A Woman of Intelligence by Karen Tanabe. This is a book that I had picked up as part of my library, like go to the library with me haul, and I was really excited for this book because it sounded like something I was really gonna like, and unfortunately it really did not work for me at all. This book follows Katerina Edgeworth, who it's set in 1954. She's an Ivy League trained multilinguist. She's worked for the UN, and now she's married to a doctor and has kind of had to give up her professional life to be a housewife, as was the case in the 50s. And she feels very trapped in that role. She wants to work. She wants to be out there doing things, using her languages, things like that. And she just can't. Her husband wants her to be at home with her kids, and so she feels very trapped. And then she's approached by an FBI agent who wants her to work with, basically become an informant for them and work with them to try to get in touch with a guy from her past who is a high-level Soviet spy. And so it just kind of follows that. I did not like this book at all. I just said that, but it started out really funny, and like she's trying to wrangle toddlers in New York City, and her toddlers are acting a fool, as is the case sometimes. But then it went from there to a lot of complaining about being a mom and losing her identity. And I could identify with that to a point, but then at a certain point, it's like, listen, this is part of your identity and you can have both. But she very much, this was very negative towards motherhood and more pro having a career. And I, as a stay-at-home mom, was not a fan of that message. It also, the whole scenario with the FBI agent was completely unrealistic. It highlighted an affair, which is a trigger for some people, and so like that was a big no for me, and I just was not a fan. I would skip this one, but that's just my personal opinion. And so that was the first one that I read this month. The next one that I read then happened to be an all-time favorite, a new all-time favorite of mine, and that is Beneath the Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan. I buddy read this with one of my subscribers, and it was so good. This is a story that follows Pino Lela, who lived in Italy during World War II, and at the beginning kind of the Nazi occupation of Italy, he goes to live at a Catholic school up in the Alps, and he helps Jews escape through the Alps, and he's a mountain climber and a skier and has been his whole life, and so he has a lot of knowledge in that area. And so you follow him with that experience, and then once he gets to be 17, his parents make him enroll or enlist in the Nazi military so that he will not be drafted. And so when he does that, through a series of events, he ends up becoming the driver for one of the commandants in Milan. I think it's Milan, is where it's set. And so he ends up becoming a spy for the Allies and getting to know kind of some of his driver's secrets. And this was full of action. It was jaw on the floor, like, what is even happening? I guess it is based off of a true, like, man's story. There has been some controversy around that, so I'm not going to speak to that. It is historical fiction because it is embellished upon regardless, and as a story, it was just jaw-dropping, and like I said, full of action and heartbreak, and just, there were so many scenes that I was just like, what just happened? It was so good. And so I'm so glad I read this. I loved it. I am planning on reading Mark Sullivan's newest novel, The Last Green Valley, this month, and I cannot wait because this one blew me away and also taught me about World War II in Italy, which I had never read about. So loved, loved, loved. Easily 5 stars, and yeah, highly recommend. The next one that I read is another one from the library haul that I did, and that is No Words by Meg Cabot. This is the story about Jo Wright, who is a children's novelist, and she gets invited to a author event, a book festival in Florida, and she goes, and her arch nemesis ends up being there. Her and another author kind of got into a tiff, and he ends up being there, and it's a romance between them. And this was very fluffy. It was kind of wah-wah, you know. It was easy to read though, and it did have some good things to say about the importance of children's literature and how other types of authors can look down on children's authors as not being relevant, and yet they are. And so what children's authors do and the importance of the work they do. And so I did like those themes throughout it, but this one was like a 2.5 star for me just because it was just fine. And there's a lot of cat language in here, which sounds really weird, but the author in here, the children's author, she writes, what are the names of her books? It's like the kitty cat, it's kind of like the Babysitter's Club, except they're cats instead of people. And so, and she's a cat, like she owns a cat, and so she, like her ringtone is a meowing sound, and she'll say things that have like cat noises in it. Sometimes it's just weird. So that was kind of weird, but it was fine. It just wasn't anything fantastic. Okay, the next book that I ended up listening to, I got this one from the library, and I ended up listening to it, came out in January, and that is African Town. This is by Irene Latham and Charles Waters. This was fan-freaking-tastic. I loved this, specifically on audiobook. It is written in verse. It's a YA book written in verse about the last slave ship that came over from Africa in 1859. It is told from, I think, 14 different points of view. One of the points of view is the slave ship itself, which is kind of unique, but it tells just the story of these people that were taken from their homes in Africa and what happened with them and to them, and their journey across the Atlantic, and what happened to them and what transpired once they made it to the United States. And you get the different points of view. You get the captain and the slave owners and are the people that, I don't know the exact right political way to say it, the people that enslaved the other people. I don't know. But you get their points of view and their children's points of view and their wife's points of view and the people, the African people, and their families and what their life was like in Africa and why they ended up on the ship in the first place. And it was just so good, and it follows them throughout their, pretty much, it starts right before they end up on the slave ship, but then it follows them throughout their whole life once they are in the United States. And I loved it. And it's about the developing of African Town, what that is, how it came to be, its importance and relevance today. There's a lot of information in the back about what's going on, like as far as the history of African Town, and kind of, yeah, it's so good. Highly recommend to anybody like 8th grade and up. I would say 7th, 8th grade and up. This would be fantastic for as far as like a history, like learning piece. It was just so well done, and the writing in verse and just all of it, it was so good. Easily 5 stars as well. Okay, Next, I listened to a book that I got from Lindsay as part of our Christmas gift exchange, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is also the book that I used for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf challenge, because the challenge for January was to read a book with a quiet word in the title, and so I chose library for that. And so, yeah, I really like this one. I gave this one 4 stars. This follows Nora, who kind of comes to a point where she's trying to decide if she wants to live or not. And at that point, she comes upon a library, and each book kind of is an alternate universe in which she makes a different decision. And so she gets to live all these different lives as if she would have made a different decision. What would have happened if she would have stuck with swimming and done competitive swimming and put everything into that? What would have happened if she would have owned a bar with her husband or her boyfriend? What would have happened if she would have done this? Those sorts of things. Some of the things that she did were like, what if she becomes an Olympian? Like, that's kind of a far stretch. That's far-fetched. There you go. But so some of them are kind of out there. But the overall premise of the book, I really appreciated. I appreciated the message of the book. It was a little heavy-handed, I will say that. But I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Gave this one 4 stars and knocked one off of my list of Christmas book exchange books that I need to read. After that, I tried reading another book that was gifted to me, and that is Lavinia by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is the book that I was gifted as part of the blind date with a book that we did. Krista, Sarah, and Lindsay and I, when we went to Asheville this past fall, we went to a bookstore and we did a blind date with a book for each other. And Sarah set me up with this book, and unfortunately this was a miss for me. I tried listening to the audiobook, I tried reading it, and this was just way too literary, way too mythology focused for me, and so I ended up DNFing this one, but I love the cover. So the cover's gorgeous. I will say that, but unfortunately, the blind date, kind of a miss, but that's okay. It was still fun to do it and to, kind of get to see what my friends think I would like, sort of thing. So that was fun, but that was a DNF for me. All right, and then after that, I read an ARC copy of I Must Betray You, which is Ruta Sepetys' new book that just came out last week. I pre-ordered it. It's not here yet. I might be a little upset and salty about this situation, but you know what? It's fine. It is what it is. I don't have it in my hands yet, but I do have an eARC copy of it that I was graciously gifted by Penguin Teen. I was also able, a lot of you know, to be part of an author discussion with Ruta Sepetys as part of like a pre-launch thing to this with Penguin Teen, to this book with Penguin Teen, and that was just a dream come true. It was so much fun. But so I did read I Must Betray You. This is a story of Christian who lives in Romania. It's set in 1989 during their revolution, and so at the time Romania was a dictatorship, and the dictator Nicolae, what was his name? Ceausescu? Oh, I think I said that right. I had to look it up like 3 times when I was reading the book because it was bugging me. He was a horrible human being, but he basically had run the country into the ground, and the people there were living in destitution. And at the same time, there was a heavy presence of the Securitate, who basically were their secret police, and they would approach young teens and children too, but that's a topic for a different day, about reporting on their parents and their friends and things like that. And so Christian is approached about reporting and informing on his family, and is told that, they will give him something in return, and he kind of feels like he's put between a rock and a hard place. He doesn't really want anything to do with them, but he feels like he kind of has to because of what they're promising him. And so he starts informing, and really what the book is about secrets and keeping secrets, and how when you can't trust anybody around you, how it starts kind of eating you from the inside out. And that's really what the whole premise of the book was. I will say this was not my favorite of Ruta Sepetys' books. She is easily an auto-buy author for me. I love her books. This one I felt like was a little clunky at times, and there were certain things that were included in the book that I felt were forced. But I still really enjoyed it. I loved getting to talk to her about it and talk about or hear about her process in writing this, some of the behind the scenes of getting to interview specific people, was just like, wow. I am just in awe of her and her research. But as far as the writing specifically went in this, it wasn't my favorite, but I still think it's really important. It's a topic that I had never heard of before, which tends to be the case with Rita Sepetys novels. And I'm still super glad that I read it. This one got like a high 3-star for me. All right, and then the next one that I read was Starfish. This is by Lisa Phipps, and this is another book in verse. This is a middle grade book in verse, and this follows, what is her name? Ellie, who is overweight. And it's really her journey through middle school and being teased and bullied, and her mental health, and her relationship with her parents, and her relationship with food, and her relationship with her friends, and clothing, and all of the things that go into body image when you're a middle schooler. And I loved this book. The mother in this book is awful. Oh my goodness. And sometimes I feel like she was a little exaggerated, but it was almost needed. But I love the message that was in this book. This is own voices, in the sense that Lisa Phipps wrote this out of a place of experience. A lot of the situations that are in this book were based off of things that happened to her in her life. And so I really respect that. And I absolutely love this. This is a must read for any middle school kid. It also won a Prince Award for a YA as one of the outstanding YA books this past year. And it's well deserved. But really it is completely suitable for any middle grade age, any YA age. And it's just such an important book. And I loved it so much, and easily 5 stars again. All right, and then after that, I read a graphic novel, middle grade graphic novel that I loved. This is Lightfall, The Girl in the Galdurian. This is book 1. So it's the first in a new series. This is by Tim Probert, and I loved this so much. So I picked this up after one of the girls that I follow on Instagram had read it and raved about it and said there was on-page representation of anxiety. And so I picked it up right away and I loved it. I'm trying to see if I can find a page where you can see what she's talking about as far as, yeah. So here's a page where you can see all these black squiggles. That's her anxiety, and things start getting dark. And whenever she's having an anxiety attack or a bout with anxiety, you see all those black squiggly lines starting to appear around her, and it's very apparent what she's going through. But this is the story of, what is her name? B and Cad, and Cad is the Galdurian, B is the girl, and she is searching for her grandfather who went missing, and they live in this world where the sun does not exist, and so they have lights that they have erected like throughout, their world that are protected, that give light to the earth. And so it was just so good. It's a fantasy adventure graphic novel that I loved. Highly recommend. Go check it out. It was a good one. All right. And then I listened to The Hating Game. Oof, you guys, this one was hard. I listened to this because one of my in real life friends loved it and raved about it, and I was like, okay, I'll pick it up next. Let's go. Let's do this. And I really, really, really did not like this book at all. Like 1 star, did not like it. I think I have just realized I am not a fan of romances where the only attraction is a physical attraction. That's it. The guy in this book was horrible, and I did not understand the premise of these two having a history of not getting along at all. They're both very horrible to each other, and there's history of that. It's not like they just met each other, they rubbed each other the wrong way once or twice, and then they got to know each other and now they get along. Like, they've been working together for a while at the onset of this book, and now all of a sudden they want to jump each other's bones because they're hot. Like, I don't understand. Also, the amount of times that, who is it, Sally Thorne, is that who wrote this? The amount of times that she mentions how small the girl is. I am a petite person. I'm short, I'm small, I'm a petite person, and it bugged the crap out of me. So I can only imagine how this would make somebody feel who is taller or larger or bigger or whatever. Also, the amount of times that she puts down, and what do you need? Oh, I love you, buddy. You're a sweetheart. Okay, go play, okay? The amount of times that she puts down men for being short or small or whatever, totally not acceptable. Like, no, I was not here for that at all. Like, nope, I was out. So that one got 1 star for me, and no thank you. Which I kind of felt bad about, but it is what it is. All right, the next one I read was another buddy read, and that is City of Thieves by David Benioff. This was so good. This one I read off of the recommendation from Gloria. This is one of her favorite books from Gloria Z. Thompson, and I'm glad I read it. This is the story of 2 boys, Lev and Kolya, during the siege on Leningrad. They are both each arrested for different things, and they are given together the task from one of the commanders or something like that to find a dozen eggs. He needs them to find a dozen eggs for his daughter's wedding cake. And during this time in Leningrad, there were no eggs, there were no chickens, there was no nothing to eat. And so the city was severely depraved, severely starved, and he wanted them to find a dozen eggs. And he basically said, if you find a dozen eggs, I'll let you go. If you don't, you're a dead man walking, basically. And so this is their story of how they go about doing that. Eventually they cross over into enemy lines, and stuff happens. The only thing I will say about this book that I was not the biggest fan of is you have a 17 and a 20-year-old guy, both, respectively, whatever. During wartime, there was a lot of talk about sex and women and physical stuff. And I'm like, ew. Like, I don't need to know about teenage boys and what goes on in their heads. But it was just part of the book, and it was there a lot. So not a huge fan of that. There was also some really gory stuff that kind of came out of left field a couple of times in here that I was like, whoa, gross. So, but that was the reality of the time, and so anyway, I still really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. All right. And then I picked up the new Newbery winning book, The Last Quintista. You guys, oh my goodness. I had never heard of this book before. I love watching the American Library Association Youth Media Awards and getting to know all the new winners and yada, yada, yada. And usually the Newbery winner is something that's been kind of on my radar, at least. This one, I had literally never heard of this book before in my life. And so the day that they announced it, I immediately went to Scribd and I got the audiobook, and I listened to the audiobook in less than 48 hours. And I am obsessed. I loved this book so much. This is a sci-fi book that is set in the year 2070, I believe, something like that. And this girl, Petra, I cannot talk, Petra Pena, she wants to be a storyteller. She loves her abuela. Her abuela has told her stories her whole life. She wants to be a storyteller. And so her family, her parents are botanists, and so her family is selected to go on this spaceship. Basically, Halley's Comet is hitting Earth. The Earth is going to be destroyed, and so a select number of people have been selected to go on a spaceship and basically restart somewhere else. And her parents are botanists, and so they end up going with her and her brother. And she really has a huge interest in being a storyteller. Well, when she wakes up on the other side of her cryo sleep, she comes to find out that this other group of people have kind of taken over, and they're brainwashing everybody and making everybody forget everything that happened on Earth. They don't want any war. They don't want any discord. They don't want any disagreement. Everybody's going to get along. Everybody's going to do things for the collective. And this is really a book that explores the importance of storytelling and the importance of history and the importance of teaching history and teaching us about our, past mistakes and what we learned from them and the stories that we tell about along the way and how stories can give us hope and give us connection. And it was so good and so well done, and I loved it so much, and I already cannot wait to reread it, and it easily got 5 stars. All right. And then after that, I listened to another romance. I picked up The Royals Next Door, which is another one I got from my library. When I went to the library, I picked this one up, and this one was so much fun. So I'm glad that I read this one too. But this one follows Piper. She's an elementary school teacher, and she moonlights by like having a romance novel podcast. So a podcast where she talks all about romance novels. And she lives in this home that is on the estate of this huge mansion. She lives like in what was formerly the servants' quarters. And one day she's going home and her road's blocked off, and she's like, what in the world is even happening? Well, come to find out that a royal couple, who pretty much are Harry and Meghan, but without being Harry and Meghan, are leaving London and are going to be staying at this mansion. And so their bodyguard basically has to check her out, make sure she's not a threat, yada, yada, yada. They get off on the wrong foot. It's basically a romance between her and the bodyguard. It's a ton of fun. And I loved it. I loved the talk about not being ashamed of what you read, not being judged for what you read, because she reads a lot of romance. That's a point in this book. I loved the points in here about how we can't judge teachers about what they do in their free time. That's none of anybody's business. And so that was brought up in here. And it was good. This is an example of like a hate to love sort of thing where there is mention of like she's attracted to his body, but it was more than that. And it was more of a, we got off on the wrong foot, but now we're getting to know each other and we know that things are a little deeper than that, and you know, whatever. And so I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was fun. There are some steamy scenes that I kind of had to like fast forward through a little bit. But you know, it is what it is. So this one was fun. Royals Next Door by Karina Hale, I think. Okay. And then after that, I think I have two more here. I read Ripped Away by Shirley Riva Vernick. This was an arc that was sent to me very kindly by the author. This comes out on February 8th. And so, yeah, this is available for purchase now. Yeah, by the time this goes up, this will be available. And this is a middle grade book that is about these two kids that are transported from present day back to London, England during the time of the Jack the Ripper spree. They're two Jewish kids, and during that time in London when Jack the Ripper was going on his tirade, there was a lot of xenophobia, a lot of anti-Semitism going around London because people were just scared, and fear breeds unreasonableness in my perspective. And so it just kind of explores that time and these kids and how they end up like getting back to present day. This one was okay for me. It was not my favorite. I felt like at the end of every chapter, I just wanted more. At the end of the book, I just wanted more. There wasn't quite enough meat there for my personal taste, but the bones were good. And one of the issues that I had with this was the whole like time travel thing. I didn't really understand why it was there, how it really worked, why the kids that were selected, all of it. So it was just okay, like I said, for me, but it was an interesting topic. And once again, thank you to the author for sending this to me. I really appreciate it. All right, and then the last book that I read in January was Solamar, The Sword of the Monarchs. This was another arc that I got from NetGalley. This is Pam Munoz Ryan's new book. That just, when did this come out? This came out, yeah, in February 1st. So this just came out too. And this I really enjoyed. I enjoyed this one quite a bit, actually. And this book follows Solamar, who is the princess in this town in Mexico. And she one day has an encounter with some butterflies. And after that encounter, she is able to tell the future a little bit. And yeah, it's just kind of about what's going on with her town, her that she lives in, and it's in danger, and she has to kind of go on this mission to save it. This has a very like fairy tale adventure fable atmosphere in it, and I thought it was a ton of fun. I really liked it. It had just enough like adventure mixed with the Mexican culture and fable. Like, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Is it my favorite Pam Munoz Ryan? No. I don't think anything will ever be Echo, but you know, those are pretty high standards to live up to. But this, I love this way more than Manana Land, which was her last one that she wrote, and I would highly recommend it. I think specifically for the like 5th, 6th grade age range, this is going to be a ton of fun for kids that like adventure stories. There's a lot of dialogue in this one about women and how women are equally capable of leading and being in charge, and kind of women should be treated equally and given a seat at the table and all of that. And so I appreciated that as well. So that's it. Those are all of the books that I read in January. Whew, that was a long one, guys. So yeah, I'm considering possibly switching this up and starting to do mid-month wrap-ups. Let me know if that's something that you prefer, or if you would rather I just do them all at the end of the month, because I have been consistently reading a lot of books lately. So let me know what you guys think about that. I haven't decided one way or the other, but let me know. And yeah, if you've read any of these, if you have opinions about any of these books, let me know that as well. And that's going to do it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you'll stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!